I believe that Springfield's future hinges on smart, sustainable growth, and Ford SGF does provide a really solid roadmap for that. For me, there are two priorities that really stand out. So, housing and neighborhood development. Springfield is facing a housing shortage, so we need to ensure that we have a diverse mix of options that are affordable, safe, high quality, and accessible. So, strengthening neighborhoods while promoting development will help us maintain the city's unique character while also meeting the needs of our growing population in Springfield. The second would be economic development and workforce development. So, a thriving economy depends on attracting and retaining a strong workforce. So, investing in workforce training, supporting local businesses, and ensuring that Springfield remains a place where people want to live and work should be a priority for us. Creating and promoting a pro-business environment doesn't necessarily mean that we need to sacrifice transparency or efficiency. I think it means striking a balance of both. So, number one, I think it's important that we look at streamlining our permitting and zoning processes, modernizing or simplifying them by creating clear guidelines and reducing unnecessary barriers to development, I think will help us move our community forward. Public-private collaboration and partnerships, so engaging our stakeholders early and often. I think that we've seen with a lot of the controversy around some of our neighborhood developments that the lack of communication can really cause issues that really have ripple effects. So I think communicating early and often, making sure that we are clear and transparent with developers about our process, and informing everyone about what's happening along the way can help ease some of these issues that we've been seeing in the community. There are some just really important things to mention here. So, roadway and traffic flow improvements, increasing walkability, and making sure we have a strong transit system. It's not just about cars. I think Springfield has been known for a long time as being kind of like a drivable community, but not necessarily a walkable or bikeable community. So, it's all about making sure that people can get around and get to work and do the things they enjoy, while also being able to walk, bike, take the bus, drive. So I think that investments in infrastructure that supports walkability, it's really important for neighborhood growth and development, but I think it's also really key to economic development. So we've got a lot of folks in our community that do walk or bike to work or take the bus. And so making sure that we have options and infrastructure that's safe for them to use those methods of transportation is really important.
So, looking at our code update, I believe that that might be the single most important aspect of our Ford SGF plan because not only does it allow for zoning reform, which we need in Springfield to address our housing supply as well as housing diversity, but we want the mixed use developments. But also, I believe that allowing for a more streamlined process for permitting as well as the approval process for applicants to be able to develop is a key aspect. And the trade-off will be improving design standards. We need to improve upon how our buildings and how our spaces look. And so I think that that is a win-win to have a streamlined permitting process, but also to improve upon our design standards. And all of that leads into the other two priorities that I want to speak on, and that is neighborhood revitalization, but also entrepreneurial stewardship. So I'm a firm believer, I mean, I'll die on this hill, that we need to shop local, create local, and own local. Well, of course, it starts with hiring the right city manager that can work really, really well with our permitting division of the city, but also our planning department. So we really want to be able to hire a dynamic individual that can really support the teams that support the planning department. as well as BDS, who's in charge of permitting. Secondly, I think that we have to get the right people in place. I think we do have some really good folks in place with our Planning and Zoning Commission. I actually chair the committee that appoints individuals, or actually makes recommendations to the full council to appoint individuals to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so I think that that's a key thing for transparency, because there's opportunities, say for instance, if you have applicants who are wanting to get a conditional use permit, or if you have an individual who wants to transform their residential property into a short-term rental. Most of that is going to be at the planning and zoning level now, and so having the right city manager in place that can coordinate and work with the right individuals, as well as being able to have the right individuals on the Planning and Zoning Commission. We don't just want to be able to build it, we want to be able to maintain our infrastructure for years to come. I will say that street design, narrowing streets, as well as streetscaping, allow for individuals, along with our sidewalks and our ADA accessible sidewalks, allow for alternative forms of transportation, allow for us to walk, bike more to the wonderful businesses that we love to patronize, but also looking at the needs of our larger employers, such as our manufacturing employers, who may be looking to come here and looking at site design. So of course they're going to want to have the electric, natural gas, water, broadband hookup, and all those things already in place as they're considering site design. But also green infrastructure. We don't want to forget about green infrastructure, how that impacts water quality as well as air quality, and it beautifies, it adds to quality of place with native plantings, and allow for just a place for us to enjoy more for years to come.
I think all the elements of Ford SGF are important because they reflect our community's desires for what we want to be in the future. The three that most stand out to me first is housing. As we think about the success of a community, we can have all the other elements in place, but people need somewhere to live. And I think that's particularly true when we're looking at young families who have been increasingly priced out of home ownership being an option with the imbalance we see between supply and demand. And we're several thousand units short across different price points, across different types of housing. We cannot solve that unless we are committed to achieving the Ford SGF goal of adding housing options for residents in Springfield. The second element that stands out to me from Ford SGF is the idea of outdoors everywhere, which is found in the idea of connecting to nature and initiatives found in the plan like Ungap the Map for Ozark Greenways. We live in such a beautiful area in the Ozarks. There's so many outdoor resources, so many things to do, that the more we can invest in that, the more it improves the quality of life for our residents. It makes it a more attractive place for people to come and visit, and hopefully when they visit, they find out how much they enjoy it and they'll want to move here. But that's a real quality of life driver and a way that we can improve our community. The third item that I would identify is corridor improvements. As we look around the city of Springfield, we have entryway corridors that are not up to where that they should be. And that's a real opportunity to invest in making our city more welcoming as people are introduced to it, but also invest in corridors that can add economic activity, can add jobs, can add housing, and take advantage of areas that are currently underutilized along existing transportation infrastructure. I think when we're looking to achieve the goals of making sure that land use decisions and other associated decisions are fair, are transparent, are efficient, we need to make sure, I think, first to keep the goals in mind. We have very clear goals that are enumerated in the Forward SGF Comprehensive Plan that have been established by the community. We want to see more quality jobs for people. We need to see more housing options. We want to see growth in our community. And we have guidelines and direction in the plan for how we achieve those things. And so we need to make sure that we're making decisions and providing everyone involved in the process with fair certainty. The vision is out there, the guidelines are out there, the processes are clearly established, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we are following those, again, with the goal of achieving what we want to achieve based on our community's comprehensive plan. That means that we need to make sure that we're communicating, we need to make sure that we are listening, we need to make sure that we are staying true to our processes. And it also means that at the end of the day, that those of us on council need to make sure that we've heard everybody, but we are willing to make the right decision on each of these cases, even if it may not be the easy one. Because when we're looking at those decisions, they are oftentimes decisions that are going to have impacts that will last beyond the current generation. In terms of things like the availability of housing, in terms of things like the availability of jobs and how we grow as a community. And so I think part of that is council being able to make those tough decisions. And I think a big part of it too is making sure that we have the codes and processes that achieve those goals. And we have a real opportunity with the land use code overhaul that we're working through right now based on Forward SGF that I think will have a real positive impact. I think when we're looking at infrastructure improvements, certainly we want to look at the improvements that align with our goals as a community. But on top of that, I think we want to look at prioritizing projects that can leverage either private investment or other external investment so that when we invest in an infrastructure project, it has cascading effects in terms of adding housing, in terms of adding good jobs, in terms of adding community amenities or other economic activity that benefits the residents of Springfield. If we are just investing in infrastructure by itself with nothing that it leverages or nothing that it leads to, then we're not making full use of our money. I think a good example of that are investments that we're making in the Grant Avenue Parkway, which is utilizing federal funds for the infrastructure investment. It's taking a corridor that is currently not utilized to its full potential, and we're making those investments in a way that will attract private investments along the corridor once it's done. The Restore Jordan Creek project downtown is another example of leveraging external funds for a project that will then be a catalyst for private investment around it, where you have buildings that have been vacant for a long time. You have a lot of developable land just adjacent to our downtown, and being able to turn that from the underutilized area it is now to a vibrant area with housing, with jobs, with economic activity that will improve downtown, that will improve the city and help advance our Forward SGF goals as well. So that to me is key, and I think that is found too in the priorities we see for our 3/4 cent tax, the half-cent portion of that, where we are looking for making those investments that do have that effect of drawing in additional investment from other sources.
So I'm an architect and a real estate developer, so I kind of see things from multiple perspectives. I think neighborhoods right now are one of the things that really need our attention, and Forward SGF has some components of that for neighborhoods. I feel like Springfield has generated a new comprehensive plan, and each neighborhood should have its own little mini comprehensive plan generated. And so that way there's some certainty for neighborhoods and developers around the edges of the neighborhoods. I also think that we really need to be thinking about higher density housing in our city. We do have a housing crisis, and creating more housing opportunities for people, whether it's affordable, attainable, duplex, triplex, whatever they are, we need more. And I think both the neighborhoods and the city have some responsibility in helping solve that problem. Number 3, I really think we need to continue growth. in our city and the city boundaries, both in the downtown district as well as the arterial corridors. We have the opportunity to grow within our city boundaries and have better economic vitality for our city, both in terms of property tax, sales tax. And those kinds of growth areas and growth patterns would also lead us to a point of being able to have better transit facilities long term. So one of the things I think about here is the experience of the people on City Council and the Planning Commission and how they make some of these decisions. One of the things I'm bringing to the table is my history of working on projects all over the country in multiple cities as an architect, as a real estate developer. So bringing that expertise and experience and broad brushstrokes to the table is very important. I really think each project, each opportunity should be treated with its own unique character and qualities. Sometimes we just look at these projects and look at the numbers and say, yes, this looks good. But I think you have to look at how that project specifically impacts the immediate surroundings. And so using those opportunities to have the conversations about how projects impact their surroundings is really important. We also have a consultant that we've hired from to generate our new land development code kind of talked about this early on in the process. We have a certain boundary and certain number of square feet and certain number of acres within our city. We need to generate the highest crop yield per acre we can in a farmer's format. And that means trying to see what projects provide us the best long-term sales tax and property tax without impacting all the things that we really love about our city. And so again, looking at arterial corridors and the downtown districts, and even within the neighborhoods. Sometimes neighborhoods want to see things happen within their neighborhood for neighborhood services and different things. And so I feel like it's all on the table, and now's the time to be thinking about it. We're at a pivotal moment in our city's growth pattern, and it's time to be thinking more like a small city than a big town. So infrastructure is a whole other conversation, and it seems like the city as an entity has some responsibility in infrastructure. And I feel like one of the things we need to pay attention to, and I'm kind of back to neighborhoods again off of the three questions, there's a common thread through here. Some of our older neighborhoods really need some attention to their stormwater and how they handle that and how it's been handled in the past. Sidewalk improvements, street lighting, some of the things that maybe weren't thought about as much in the past decades needs to be sort of brought up to speed for some of the older neighborhoods. I also think about our clean water system. I know City Utility does a great job of delivering that to everybody, but looking at the infrastructure, looking at the old areas and making sure that that is up to speed and up to date is one part of that water infrastructure that we need to consider strongly, but also we've got to be looking at what our water source looks like. Where do we get our water? What is the watershed, the water quality around our city? And not just around our city at Fellows Lake and some of the other places where we get our water. We got to remember that our water comes from Stockton Lake. And so thinking a little bit broader and bigger picture about water, I feel like we should be thinking about how to protect that in the decades to come. Lastly, I think one of the infrastructure improvements that we need to make is about transit. We just formed a local organization called the Urban Land Institute, and that's all about best practices of how we grow as a city. And one of the things I think we've got a lot of room for improvement on is transit. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be creating more demand for transit and changing the perception of people that transit is not just for poor people. I also think that thinking about our arterial corridors and creating a demand for transit is going to be another part of that conversation.